We play the game of where in the world is my F1 radio pal roughing it this weekend? Harry Benjamin. Hello. Good morning to you. I would like to think this is one of the more traditional ones for you that perhaps isn't all glitz and glamour. I don't know. Belgium? I don't know. Tell me more quickly.
It is one of the more historical tracks, but I've still managed to have my morning massage. No yacht this time. No yacht. Man. I think we last spoke to you in Monaco, but I've had to park the yacht for now, but I'll make do with the massage and the cappuccino that I've got in front of me.
It's all yours. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Kevin. We will come back to county cricket a little later on after we are done here for free practice one. But hello and welcome indeed. We are in Belgium. Formula One has passed the halfway point of the season, and we arrive at Spa-Francorchamps for round 13. It's also a sprint weekend, the third of the year, so we really do get straight into it. Just the one practice session before we go qualifying for the sprint race later this afternoon. And alongside myself, Harry Benjamin, I'm joined throughout the day by the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson, F1 journalist Rebecca Clancy, and delighted to have with us for the first time Red Bull F1 Academy driver Alicia Pomowski. Alicia, thank you so much for joining us. How are you? Welcome.
I'm very well, thank you, Harry, and thank you very much for having me on the show. I'm very excited for this weekend. Sprint race weekends are my favourite, so I'm so excited to see how it all gets underway.
It's going to be brilliant, isn't it? Because the forecast, I think we're looking okay today. It's a little bit grey and overcast and very foggy this morning, but Saturday and Sunday there is certainly rain in the air, and Spa, very much a microclimate, so you never quite know what you're going to get, and it varies from one part of the circuit to the other. But before we get into all things, you're obviously racing in F1 Academy this season, the all-female championship, just sort of designed to help get more women participation in motorsport. How's it all going?
It's all been amazing so far, thank you. It's been a big learning curve for me this year. It's my first year in F1 Academy, my rookie season, so there's been a lot to learn. There's a new car for me, new circuits, a new team, so a completely new environment that I've had to adapt to in terms of the people that I'm working with. But so far it's been a positive year. I think the results haven't necessarily reflected the amount of progress that we've made recently, but I still think I've learned so much. The progression has been huge. The pace is always strong as well. We're always up there in that sort of front pack. It's difficult always racing against second-year drivers, but my teammate Chloe Chambers, she's one of those second-year drivers, and she's having an extremely strong year so far. So that's been a great opportunity for me to race alongside her and learn from her and bounce off each other to try and lead the team forward. So it's been so far so good.
Oh, brilliant. And you can't deny, getting off with a win and fifth in the championship is still pretty good. And how many more races have you got left to go?
So three race weekends, 3 race weekends left now. I've just actually got back home from Zandvoort, just had 2 days of testing at Zandvoort earlier on this week, but we're racing at Zandvoort this year, Singapore, and then the finale is Las Vegas. So super excited for the rest of the year, obviously aiming for more podiums and wins. That'd be the dream.
That'd be brilliant, and some amazing places to go racing as well. Vegas will be a real highlight, I imagine.
Oh, I can't wait, and I can't wait for the lower temperatures of Vegas as well, especially after the humidity of Singapore, I'd imagine. So yeah, super excited for Vegas at night time as well. That must be super cool, so I can't wait.
It really is an absolute spectacle to see, isn't it, Beck?
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. Can I ask you about Singapore, because a lot of the F1 drivers have interesting ways that they train for Singapore. Bottas used to always say that he used to train in a sauna. What special things do you do to try and acclimatise to those kind of conditions?
That's a great question, and a lot of heat training, just heat acclimatisation. I've got a great support network behind me in the Red Bull Racing Pepe Jeans Academy programme, so I have my own performance coach, and she's got a great idea of how the body needs to adapt, what you need to do in order to be physically prepared for Singapore, because it does pose a completely different challenge to drivers than any other circuit. So I am nervous coming from the UK because I'm used to cold temperatures. I'm from Manchester, so it's never as hot as it is in Singapore. But yeah, it's the same for everybody, and it's about working as hard as you can behind the scenes to make sure we're prepared when we get there.
Wheeling your treadmill into the sauna then.
Exactly, that's the one.
That's what I was doing this morning, and that is also what I know that Andrew Benson always likes to do before a race weekend, and we can say hello to our BBC F1 correspondent over at 5 Live Race Centre. Good morning, Andrew. How are we? You well?
I'm fine, thank you. No saunas in my hotel, I'm afraid.
Oh, that's a real shame. Did you mistake the booking on that one?
No, but I can tell you that the upper floor fire escape runs through my bathroom, so that's Belgian for you.
Oh, excellent. Absolute excellence. I mean, what can you tell us so far? We're just about 30 seconds away from getting this practice one session underway, and it's a big weekend, this one. Lots of changes, and of course, actually, we've had a sort of weird couple of weeks off. It's like an early summer break.
Yeah, and quite a lot of news in that break, obviously, or one major bit of news, I should say. obviously a new person on the Red Bull pit wall, Laurent Mekies. I bumped into him this morning just to make sure I got the pronunciation of his surname right. He told me I did it first time, so I'm quite pleased with myself about that. And there's a lot of gossip going on in the paddock, and lots of weather around, as there often is at Spa, so it should be an interesting weekend.
Well, it certainly will be. We will, of course, dissect all of the latest news shortly, but the green light has just come on at the end of the pit lane, and cars are peeling out onto the Spa circuit. And for those who wish to do a sync-up, it is coming your way now. 59 minutes and 28 seconds remain of this one and only practice session. As a reminder, it's a sprint weekend, so we go straight into sprint qualifying later on, and then Saturday we'll start proceedings with the sprint race before we then have qualifying for the Grand Prix, and then Sunday is the Grand Prix as normal. But the sun is peeking out from the clouds above this Spa circuit. We're nestled in the rolling hills of the Ardennes forest at the longest track on the calendar, just a tad over 7 kilometres, 19 corners, 10 to the left and 9 to the right, with some of the most iconic turns on the calendar, like Eau Rouge up to the top at Raidillon, down that long Kemmel Straight. It is fast and furious in that first sector. It is quite technical and twisty in the middle sector, and trying to make up for that power as you run all the way through the flat out left-hander, certainly in qualifying at Blanchimont, down towards the bus stop chicane to finish off a lap. It is certainly a driver's favourite. But is it our favourite track? Do we like it, Alicia? I mean, you're the driver here, and I know you've not raced here, but it seems like you certainly want to go. Let's just hear from Sainz.
I cannot accelerate. It's just a lip hop.
So some early problems there for Carlos Sainz in the Williams. He's stuck in limp home mode at the moment, out on track, but hopefully he'll be able to limp by and get himself back to the pit lane. You're eager to drive this track. What is it about Spa that just gets a driver excited?
Yeah, I love this circuit. I've done many laps on it around my simulator at home, but never actually been there in real life, so I'm very, very jealous of the drivers there this weekend. But what an awesome circuit. I think it's potentially the longest circuit on the calendar, if I'm correct. So it's a huge challenge to the drivers. I think Sector 2 is extremely technical. It's an old school circuit.
Critical problem on this limp mode. So please no full load.
So critical problem on the limp mode. So please take it. I think that's his engineer, Carlos Sainz, asking him to tell him to take it easy, as he clearly has a technical fault on that car. So it's gone into limp home mode, which is essentially almost like it's gone into a low speed mode when they come into the pit lane, almost as if the pit limiter is on. So limits how fast you can go. He's just making his way through the Fagnes chicane and into the final sector, very slowly out on track, still rolling around there, but not ideal for Carlos Sainz and the Williams team, who brought quite a big upgrade package for this weekend, what they're describing as their last upgrade of the season. And Lance Stroll's got a problem as well. He's just been told to box this lap as he comes in. So early teething problems. We've all had a couple of weeks off, so clearly so have the cars as Lance Stroll gets wheeled back in. But cars still remaining out on track. Indeed, everybody out there, with the exception of Stroll and Carlos Sainz, making his way back to the pits now. But back to why Spa is so good. I mean, it's delivered some amazing races. It's got some fantastic corners. You have to see it to believe it, the elevation change at Eau Rouge. It is so steep. I was taken aback when I first went there. I couldn't even walk up it without struggling.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. And I saw there was this run that we're back from Sainz.
A big issue. I do not know. Potentially, I do not know. So just bring it back. No full load.
So no full load. Don't put your foot all the way down on the throttle, Carlos Sainz, and he has made it back to the pits now. So we'll try and figure out what's going on down at Williams, but he has made it back to the pit lane. Back to you, Alicia.
Yeah, this is not good news for Carlos Sainz and Lance Stroll, because with it being a sprint race weekend as well, we have very limited running in this FP1 session. So only the 60 minutes of practice before we then head straight into qualifying. So this track time is essential for the drivers to get used to the circuit, have a feeling of the car, gather any data that they need. So this is really an issue that hopefully they can solve.
Carlos Sainz, just hearing him. Yeah, just a few minutes underway. Already problems for the likes of the Williams of Carlos Sainz with a technical fault. He's come straight back into the pits, but no major times to report yet. Of course, this is the first weekend and the major news of the new boss at Red Bull, Laurent Mekies. It's his first weekend at the helm, having replaced Christian Horner. So all eyes will be on him to see how they get on. Just a little update into 5 Live, and for those hardcore fans with us on 5 Sports Extra 2, we'll get straight back into it. Bit of traffic for Max Verstappen to navigate as he makes his way through the left-hander of turn 9, now known as the Jackie X corner. The last couple of years, it's Lando Norris, fastest of anybody at the moment in these early stages, the 146.0. On the hard tyre, Antonelli is second, 146.1, and Piastri's just popped up to third. Ocon, Russell, the top 5. As Verstappen makes his way around on his first flying lap, Beck, you're not a particular fan of this track, are you?
No, this is going to be very controversial, isn't it? Please don't at me on this. I don't really enjoy much about this track. Yes, we have had some great racing, and I can fully understand how it is a brilliant driver's track. Just before we came on air, Alicia and I were chatting about how it's so technical. It's really that so much comes down to the driver here. It does provide great racing. It's not fun to get to. There's nowhere fun to stay. It is always an issue. The weather, I was there in 21, that was not a fun year to be there. I mean, fair play to the fans, they don't budge, I can tell you that much. But more importantly than that, my big issue with this track is that it has not evolved enough with how the cars have evolved. And I was there in 2019 when Antoine Hubert, a Formula 2 driver, he died because of a crash going through Eau Rouge up the top of Raidillon. It's a blind crest. He was hit by Juan Manuel Correa, absolutely not Correa's fault at all. He couldn't see, and it led to the death of the Frenchman. And that whole weekend was utterly horrendous from start to finish. That crash, every single time a car went up the hill, you had to hold your breath because you truly did not know what was going to happen. We had W Series there, the precursor to F1 Academy as we know it now, and it was just horrendous. And even now, when I watch cars on track, it's probably the only time of the year I quite enjoy practice because they're not racing each other. It just makes me very nervous. They have made changes and tweaks to that corner. They've made it wider. They pushed the grandstands back so there's more of a runoff because the issue in 2019 was when Hubert, he spun, he crashed into the barrier, and then he was basically rebounded back out into the track. So they've made that much wider, so that won't happen. But there's just such a sense of unease about this track that I don't really enjoy watching racing here anymore.
Well, it certainly is a controversial topic, that's for sure. I mean, Andrew, do you agree with what Beck said there?
Well, I mean, I certainly see her point. It is a dangerous circuit. They've done what they can. We don't know, obviously, until hopefully something as terrible as Hubert's accident won't happen again, and these changes will prove their worth. But I mean, basically, unfortunately, there's a direct correlation in Formula One often between the amount of jeopardy there is on a track and how good that track is. So Suzuka, for example, in Japan is another one where you can have a very bad accident. And the others around the world are the same. And I think, I don't know, I mean, I think the problem is racing drivers just generally, they find themselves in a quandary about these sorts of situations. They recognise that Spa is dangerous and Suzuka is dangerous, but they love driving on it so much, and part of the joy, I'm afraid to say, is wrapped up in the danger. I wrote a piece about this actually after Hubert's death, which was much more eloquent, I think, than I'm saying at the moment. But when I tried to sort of explain this sort of paradox, if you like, about why racing drivers love doing what they do despite the risks, and it's part of the complexities of those arguments are part of the appeal of Formula One. But it is, on a purely on the aspect of pure sort of human safety, it does raise very difficult questions, and I don't think they're questions that Formula One in specifically, or motorsport in general, has a solution to, because I don't think there is a solution. Because if you strap yourself into a 200 mile an hour projectile, and race against other people in a similar device, you are risking your life, and that's just the way it is.
I get what you're saying, Benny, but my point is specifically this track, because look, we all watch the sport because of part of the jeopardy. You see a big crash, you see what happens. Most of the time you watch it, in fact, 99.9% of the time you're watching it, and they walk away safely. When we were just in Silverstone a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking about the Guan Yu Zhou crash that happened, and that was an utterly incredible thing to see, and he walked away from that. And Formula One has done unbelievable work in progressing with the safety, and where we are now in the halo, and that came in, and that was controversial at the time, but my goodness, aren't we grateful for it now. And I understand the jeopardy. Look, I love watching cars racing along a concrete wall at 200 miles an hour in Singapore more than anyone. I completely understand that, and I get the thrill of it, but there is just something about this track. It's just that blind crest over Radion. It just makes me uneasy, and it does make the drivers uneasy as well. In 2019, following it, they were all a bit apprehensive about it.
But I suppose, as you say, that, Beck, you're coming from a very track-specific thing. But of course, that danger is an element that we all, and the drivers. I remember Kevin Magnussen saying that he always felt like he was driving in the wrong era, because that's what kind of got his blood pumping, that he liked the danger and the element of it. I mean, Alicia, is it something you think about every time you get into a Formula car?
No, to be honest, and I don't think it is something that you can think about. I think just when you get in the car, when the helmet goes on, the visor goes down, you're just so focused, you get into this different zone that I can't even use words to describe. I always say when I'm in a race, I sort of feel emotionless, like I don't feel happy, I don't feel sad, because I'm just so focused and determined on what I'm doing at that current moment that anything else just becomes a blur. You just literally do not feel or think about anything else. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but it's quite a strange emotion to try and explain how I feel emotionless when I drive, but it's then when the checkered flag falls that I think you feel all the emotion and start to come back into reality a little bit.
That's the thing, I suppose you can't allow yourself to have any fear, any hesitation, because you've got to be giving it your all, otherwise you're not going to have the lap time.
Absolutely. I mean, every thousandth of a second you're fighting for, so you can't have any doubts in the back of your mind. You've just got to be fully focused and trying to get any little millimetre that you can on track to try and be at the front. And talking about those small margins with F1 this year, I am loving this, because what a close season it has been so far. The margins between all the drivers have just been so small. And talking about this weekend in particular, I do not know what to expect. Anybody could really be on pole this weekend, so I'm really excited.
It really could be. I mean, cars have been heading out on track at the moment. 47 minutes and 29 seconds remain. Oscar Piastri is the fastest driver out there on a 1:44.9 on the hard tyre. Mixture of the hard and mediums out there. Verstappen half a second back on the medium tyre. Then Antonelli, Norris, Ocon the top 5. Alonso, Russell, Behrman, Leclerc, Hadjar the top 10. Tsunoda, who you can hear right now, is on for a better lap, currently making his way into the braking zone of the bus stop chicane. He's down on 11th for now. Then it's Albon, Hulkenberg, Hamilton, Lawson the top 15, with Gasly, Colapinto, Bortoletto, Sainz and Stroll still in the pit lane after their early issues, trying to figure out what's going on for the Williams and the Aston Martin cars. Indeed, the other Williams car of Alex Albon has been having a little trouble out on track in the last few moments. A couple of replays of him finding the gravel on the exit of Malmedy and struggling to keep it on track, coming towards the end of the Kemmel Straight, having to cut the chicane. So drivers pushing the limits. Of course, this is the first session of the weekend. The track will be green, it will be rubbering in and getting more and more grip. You talk of small margins, well, let's talk about where we sit with the standings at the moment. It's just 8 points between Oscar Piastri, who leads the Drivers' Championship, and Lando Norris off the back of back-to-back wins, chasing down his teammate in second. Max Verstappen now a little further adrift in third, and then it's Russell and Leclerc the top 5. And well, there's no small margins in the Constructors' Championship, at least where McLaren are sitting. They are now double. They have double the amount of points of Ferrari. McLaren sitting pretty with a 480 points. They are 238 points clear of Ferrari. Then comes Mercedes, Red Bull and Williams leading the midfield pack as Kimi Antonelli locks up coming into La Source and has to go out wide. So too does the Alpine of Franco Colapinto. Quite a big front right lock up for the Argentine driver. In the midfield, Sauber rocketed it up to 6th, courtesy of Nico Hulkenberg's podium, and also 3 consecutive point scores on the trot. They're now ahead of Racing Bulls, and that puts Aston Martin, Haas and Alpine at the back. Everybody off the mark in terms of points, but definitely fine margins for those further down the field. George Russell just pushing the limits on the exit of Malmedy as well. Just the rear stepping out ever so slightly. It's tough, isn't it, Alicia, this kind of track, especially on a sprint weekend, because you only get one session to make it work. We've got quite a lot of teams bringing upgrades as well, which is quite an interesting decision, but you've really got to get as much out of this as you can. And I love it for that reason.
Absolutely, I agree. I love the sprint race weekends.
A lot of rear locking and instability. Understood.
Lewis Hamilton, a lot of rear locking and instability on board his Ferrari. They are running new rear suspension and a new rear corner for this weekend, so trying to get as much understanding out of that. But, you know, whereas this session you probably bed in, F1 they are almost lucky. I know in the support categories you do only get one practice session sometimes and off you go, but we talk about jeopardy. That's what I love about a sprint weekend, is one practice session. If you're in the dark, you're in the dark. The teams are in the dark, so are we.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very difficult position, this, for the drivers and the teams, because the circuit, it seems to be very low grip, to be honest, from what we're seeing on the on-track action here. We saw Kimi Antonelli have a moment into turn one, Lewis Hamilton having quite a few moments. Alex Albon earlier as well, I noticed, had quite a few snaps of oversteer. So normally what teams tend to do in the junior categories as well is wait at the start of an FP1 session, wait sort of 15-20 minutes, let the others go out, put some rubber down on track, let track evolution increase, so the grip then increases and you get more valuable data. But obviously they haven't got that luxury of time in this free practice session. So we've currently got, I don't know, around 15 drivers out on circuit. So the circuit's a lot more busy than what we'd normally see at the start of a normal FP1 session. Yeah,
it really is. The only guys in the pits at the moment are Sainz and Stroll with those issues. Colapinto's come in along with Hülkenberg and Alonso. Everybody else out on track. Antonelli, who locked up a little earlier, coming into La Source, making his way through the bus stop chicane, a right uphill through the left. The DRS zone comes, the rear wing flap flies open, and he crosses the line 1.1 seconds down, but puts him up into 6th spot. And I think whoever was ahead of him has also just had a bit of a lock-up coming into turn one. I think it might have been Pierre Gasly's Alpine, because there was a little bit of what looked like the remnants of some smoke as Antonelli went into the hairpin for the right-hander. And we're just getting a look from Gabriel Bortoletto's Sauber, not making the turn into the bus stop chicane, having to cut across, and that will invalidate his next lap as well if he was pushing. But the Brazilian in that Sauber also trying to get up to speed. Of course, actually, he's got decent form around here. Will finish second in the 2024 Formula 2 feature race here last year. Now, we can't escape it. The big news that came into this weekend, or indeed off the back of the British Grand Prix, was that Red Bull have sacked Christian Horner, Beck, the longest serving Formula 1 team principal in the paddock, no more. 20 years at the helm of Red Bull. There's no denying the success he created, but I suppose some might well be saying this has been 18 months in the making, but it also feels like a surprise at the same time. So why do you think Christian Horner was sacked now?
I think the timing is a shock. I don't think his departure is a surprise. I think it has been coming since the allegations came out at the start of last year, made by a female employee about coercive behaviour and inappropriate behaviour, both of which he was investigated twice for by Red Bull, cleared both times. So that and he's obviously always denied it, to be clear. But the writing has slightly been on the wall since then, because it had other ramifications. So we know that Adrian Newey, the absolute genius that he is, designer, he decided to leave. He didn't really like any of that. He sat across from an office from Horner, and he decided his time was done with Red Bull. He left. Then we saw Rob Marshall has also left. There's been a huge wave of people leaving Red Bull, very important people. So Red Bull was basically Newey's number 2. He actually left before this, but he went to McLaren with Jonathan Wheatley, who is incredibly influential at Red Bull. He ran that place at military precision. He was fantastic. He knows the regulations better than anyone, and I'm including the FIA. He is absolutely on top of his game. We can see the impact he's currently having at Sauber, how the operations have fallen into line, how much better their pit stops even are.
Hülkenberg on the podium.
I mean, you cannot get away from the fact that, you know, Wheatley is absolutely brilliant at what he does, and he is having an impact. And in turn, taking that influence away from Red Bull. We've then had the whole conversation that's happening with Max Verstappen. And this is what's really important, because you have to go back to the start of last year and the internal battles that were happening, and it very much emerged that there were two camps. There was the Christian Horner camp on one side, and then there was another camp on the other side, which was made up of Max Verstappen himself, although he wasn't really too bothered, he mostly just wanted to drive the car, but very much his father, Jos Verstappen, who came out, was very vocal about how Horner had to go after all of these allegations came out, how said Red Bull couldn't continue with him. And Raymond Vermeulen, who is Verstappen's manager, the three of them have been fairly crucial, not necessarily in getting rid of Horner, but it was quite clear that there were these two camps, because also on that camp was Helmut Marko. And as last year progressed, we all thought Helmut Marko was about to go. And, that would have cleared the way for Horner to cement his power and to continue in the role. But at the last minute, Max Verstappen seems to have come in and said, no, I want him around, I need him around. Marko is incredibly influential within the young driver program. In fact, he runs the whole thing. He decides who drives where within both teams, the Red Bull and the Racing Bulls. And so with Marko staying, there was another power shift that happened. On top of all of this, you have the power battles going on between majority Thai owners of the main Red Bull company and Austria, where Red Bull is obviously based. Horner started to lose the support of the Thais, and as it happened, eventually he just didn't have enough support, and so we got to 3 days after Silverstone, I think it was, and we all got the news that Horner had left. There was a stark decline in the performance since all of these allegations came out. Oh, we got Leclerc radio.
Albon 3.
That's late.
That was Leclerc not being too pleased with how late he was told Albon was coming up behind him on a flying lap, and that was at the end of the Kemmel Straight. Beck.
So I think with the downturn in performance as well, I think that's actually what finally cemented what we saw happen in between this 3-week break almost that we've had. So Max Verstappen currently lies third in the championship. He himself has written himself off out of the drivers. Oh, Bortoleto radio.
Hey, what the f*** is Hamilton doing? He's always in the middle of the track. Okay.
That was Bortoleto, not happy with Hamilton's placement of his Ferrari as they came up Eau Rouge over the top of the hill at Radion, and it did get a little bit spicy with Charles Leclerc coming through as well. We'll hear from him.
Come on. This is dangerous.
Following up on our conversation from earlier, it was rather Charles Leclerc having to thread the needle, one car to his left as he came over the top of the hill. That was Hamilton, one car to his right, and Bortoleto was just behind that gaggle of cars as well. So 4 cars all trying to wind their way up over the hill and making a bit of a hash of it.
The blind crest, as I was talking about earlier, and this is when your engineer is absolutely crucial to tell you what is ahead of you. So just to go back very quickly, Max Verstappen currently lying third in the championship behind the 2 McLaren drivers. He, we believe, has a break clause in his contract. It's always performance related. We think if he's lower than third at the summer break, which is in 2 races time, so we have Belgium and then we go to Hungary and then we go on our summer holidays. Apparently you're just having saunas and massages, Harry.
Yeah, but that's between me and Kevin House.
Yeah, okay, good. So there is this steep decline. Max Verstappen, one of the best drivers in F1 history, certainly the best driver of his generation. If he can't get that car around the track to be winning races and challenging McLaren, then let's face it, no one can. So it made the Thais look at it a bit closer. I mean, Austria wanted him gone 18 months ago, and I think when you're winning, you can get away with a lot. But when you're not, and you're very much out of the Constructors' Championship, which is the one that really matters to the teams, because that's where the money comes in, and that's where all the prize money is based off. But you're not even going to get the glory of the Drivers' Championship to kind of bandage over the cracks, as it were. So I think with that all slipping away, it's just the timing that was a surprise, nothing else really.
Andrew, let's bring you in on this. Where does this leave us then? Beck's given us a nice roundup of how we've got to this point and the potential reasons for it, but particularly Max Verstappen's future. Does this now stand a greater chance of him sticking around, or is that still very much up in the air?
Well, it's up in the air on one level, but I think it looks like the mood music is he's more likely to stay than not at the moment. He does have a way of getting out, theoretically, in certain circumstances. I've been told what those circumstances are, but I'm not allowed to reveal them. Beck's not quite right, but she's in the right ballpark.
Give us the gossip, idea. Benny, come on.
I can't, but it's not as locked into the summer break as you were suggesting. But you're in the right ballpark.
Well, you've just told us, haven't you, then, Benny?
So, I mean, I think logically it makes sense to stay because there's so much uncertainty about 2026 and who's going to have the best engine and who's going to have the best car and everything. Why take the risk? You know, everyone thinks Mercedes are going to be in the best place next year, engine-wise, but, you know, where are they going to be car-wise? So I'm not saying I know that Verstappen's going to stay. I don't. But I can say that he said yesterday that Horner leaving has no bearing on his decision. It certainly made his dad happy, as Beck was saying. So we have to wait and see a little bit, but it feels like Verstappen will stay where he is, at least for next year.
Ultimately, I suppose Max Verstappen wants to be in a car that is challenging for wins and challenging for the title, right? But with this departure of Christian Horner, Andrew, comes Laurent Mekies being promoted from the B team, let's say, Racing Bulls. Is this the beginning now of a new era and a different way of going about things for Red Bull?
I think it's going to change the way Red Bull are quite significantly. He's a very different character from Christian Horner. You know, he's an engineer, first of all, which Horner wasn't. So he can engage with the technical team on a level that's of much more considerable depth than Horner could. He's a much softer character, and I don't mean that in the sense of he's a soft touch. I mean it in the sense of he's not spiky and awkward in the way that Horner was. Horner was very aggressive, defensive in his approach with people. Mekies, I should say, isn't quite like that. I think he'll be a good team boss. I think the wider question is he's also Chief Executive Officer. He's taken over that role too, and there's obviously a commercial aspect to that role. It's interesting to see how that's going to develop. Is the Austrian side going to get more involved on the commercial side? They don't have a communications director to replace the guy who was sacked at the same time as Horner, for example. Are the Austrians going to put their person in there? Ultimately, what's happened is the Austrians have got their way. They wanted this to happen 18 months ago, as Beck said, and the Thai side decided they weren't supporting Horner anymore, weren't prepared to support him anymore. But moving forward, there's lots of uncertainty. I think Laurent Mekies is a very similar appointment as team principal to Andrea Stella at McLaren. We're yet to see, of course, whether he can be as transformative in terms of the team's performances as Stella has been. And it's also remains to be seen, as I said, how he's going to handle the other side of the business, or how the company in general is going to handle the other side of the business.
Benny, can I... Oh, sorry.
No, you carry on, Beck. Yeah.
No, I was just going to ask you, do you think the timing of Horner's departure is actually bad for Max Verstappen, in the sense of if he'd gone 18 months ago last year, then Verstappen maybe could have left at the end of last year, joined somewhere this year and had more of an influence over the 2026 regs, whereas now, like you say, there's too much jeopardy to jump now, so actually the timing doesn't really work in his favour, and he's probably better off to just ride it out with Mekies and see through 26 and then kind of get a deal there.
I think it makes sense to stay because it's too big a risk. You don't know that the Red Bull might do really well under the new regs. It might not be Mercedes you want to go to, it might be somewhere else. Ferrari, for example, there are going to be questions about their drivers if their performance doesn't improve. How long is Lewis Hamilton's contract? All these questions. Why jump now? I think, the question, would it have made a difference if Horner had been fired in February 2024? Yes, it would, for the very first reason, of course, was that Adrian knew he probably wouldn't have left, and neither would Jonathan Wheatley, given the reasons as to why they left were all revolving around Horner to one degree or another. I won't go into the details of it now, but so Red Bull would be a very different place had he gone back then. But it's also worth, I think one of the things about Horner's departure is that the performance was declining, but there was no obvious signs that it was going to improve. And I think bringing in a team principal with a technical background, and Laurent Mekies is extremely well regarded within Formula One, both as a sort of leader who has empathy and is able to support people, but also as an engineer with widespread experience. It's worth, I think, giving him a chance to see what he can do with regard to helping the technical team get to the bottom of some of the problems they've been having with this car.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, certainly a lot to digest there. Will it be a day and night change? Will Laurent Mekies have an immediate impact on the team? How will this affect Max Verstappen's future? A lot of questions still to be debated and still to be asked and answered. And we're going to be on the radio tonight on 5 Live from 9 o'clock this evening, previewing the weekend as well as diving deeper into all things Red Bull and the fallout of it. We'll also hear from the new French boss at Red Bull, Laurent Mekies, and should also say, as a result of Mekies being promoted up to Red Bull, Alan Permain steps up for the first time as team principal of a team, and he'll fill the boots of Mekies at Racing Bulls. But Alan Permain, a long-serving engineer, particularly at the Endstone outfit in its various guises, and a lot of support in the paddock too, so everyone pleased to see that appointment as well. So his first weekend in his new role, so we'll be looking at him too. 29 minutes and 6 seconds remain of this one and only practice session. It's Charles Leclerc who is now fastest, a 1:44.1 for him on the hard tyre, ahead of Oscar Piastri. Then comes Max Verstappen. Esteban Ocon running well on the medium tyre. He's up in 4th, ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Then comes Yuki Tsunoda, Lando Norris, Behrman, Stroll and Antonelli as George Russell heading down the hill towards Rivage corner, getting caught out by traffic ahead of him, having to run on a little bit to the grass and run out wide. Slightly off-cambered right-hander there, so managing to take to that a little bit of run off track. But clearly traffic is proving a little bit of an issue, Alicia, which I suppose they are trying to push, as we've discussed in this early stages. But it's normally around the shorter tracks that you find traffic management to be an issue, but here certainly it's so far scuppered quite a lot of laps for drivers.
Absolutely, and there's so many cars out on circuit currently, which obviously sort of makes the traffic issue just much worse. I think what I'm seeing from the on-track footage is that the rear axle seems to be the limiting factor for a lot of these drivers, so they're losing the rear tyres before they lose the fronts. There's a lot of snaps of oversteer, the rears look really loose, and this is very much, I've never driven it myself, but I think it's a confidence-based circuit. It's obviously extremely high commitment, high speed corners in Sector 2 and Sector 3 in particular. So yeah, I think in terms of traffic, when drivers are doing cool-down laps, they may need to go slower than maybe they would normally, just to try and give life back to the rear tyres. And very different tyre strategies going on as well. We've got hard tyres, medium tyres. Colapinto just did a run on the soft tyre and had a huge snap of oversteer, nearly had a huge moment earlier on. So yeah, it's interesting to see all the different approaches.
Yeah, absolutely, and you can hear the sounds of Carlos Sainz, who is back out on track. Beck, what more do we know about Carlos? Because he was out straight away but had an issue.
Yeah, Williams have said they've identified the issue with the fuel system and that he will be back out on track shortly, and there he is.
Lo and behold, there he is on the hard tyre, currently 20th and last, but just coming through the bus stop chicane now, so desperate to try and get half this session back at least. So there's a lot of track time missed for the Spanish racer. He comes across the line for his first lap time at still last. It's 2.6 seconds off the pace as he starts to build up. But Williams bringing a big upgrade. They're last, they say, of the year, but this has been penciled in for quite some time. Updates to the floor, the side pod and the engine cover. Indeed, actually quite a lot of teams have brought upgrades, as well as some circuit-specific things like rear wings, lower downforce setting rear wings for this track. Ferrari running new rear suspension and a rear corner. Red Bull, a new front wing and a new rear corner. Mercedes, new front wing and rear corner. Aston Martin too, front wing and nose for them being brought as performance upgrades. Racing Bulls, a new diffuser and rear corner for them too, and Williams, as I said, with mainly stuff to the floor. So interesting to bring upgrades at this point of the season, only because it's a sprint weekend, so you don't get the 3 full 1 hour sessions to really dial that in. But such are the small margins, I suppose, that we're seeing in Formula One this year, that even a half a tenth gain is worth it.
Well, actually, Fernando Alonso was saying yesterday that the upgrade for Aston Martin had been due for Hungary, the next race, but they've been pushing so hard that they've ended up bringing it earlier to this race. So, yes, it's not ideal having only one practice session, but you have to remember Parc Fermé rules aren't quite the same. So after the sprint race, they open again. So for teams like Aston Martin, as you mentioned earlier, Harry, they're down at the bottom end of the constructors, they're actually using these 3 sessions as if they're test sessions, knowing that they're not going to push to score points and trash the car during the sprint, qualifying or race. So actually for them, it is a bit more of a practice session. So it does make sense for those teams. And then we heard some really interesting comments from Lewis Hamilton yesterday. I thought he was really fascinating, talking about how he's working at Ferrari. He's been basically spending his whole time at the factory over in Maranello in between this break that we've just had. And I thought his comments were amazing. And he said the team has had amazing drivers like Kimi Raikkonen, Fernando Alonso, Sebastian Vettel, many a world title between them. And yet they didn't win a title with Ferrari. Obviously, don't at me, I know that's not correct about Kimi. But he said, but he then goes on to say, I refuse for that to be the case with me. That's why I'm going the extra mile. If you take the same path, you get the same results. And he was saying that he's actually calling in meetings with pretty much every single department he's sitting in. He's looking at their processes. He doesn't think everyone has got their foot to the floor. He thinks some people aren't working as hard as he is. And it was a pretty ruthless comments from him, actually, about what he's discovered in Ferrari. But they haven't won anything for a while, so he's probably maybe a bit right.
I nearly lost it in Rouge, so not very happy to try with this. There's something broken, or the tires are okay or what?
Nothing reported so far, we'll keep checking.
That was Isaac Hadjar a few laps ago, having a very hairy moment coming up through Eau Rouge, up the hill at Raidillon, and as you heard on the radio there, not happy, feeling something might be broken on his car. Just coming through from the stewards, a bit of impeding. We saw Russell having to take avoiding action earlier down at turn 8, so that would be coming into the Rivage corner, and with Colapinto, it was the car ahead of him, but that has, for impeding, that has now been dismissed, no further action on that front, as it's only practice. But Leclerc fastest at the moment, 0.005 of a second clear of Piastri. Then it's Verstappen, Norris, Ocon, the top 5. It's interesting, Alicia, what you were saying about interesting tyre strategies going on. Colapinto still out there on the soft, majority on the hard, some trying the medium. This is the first weekend since 2022 that we actually have a jump in compounds. Normally it's consecutive, but Pirelli here have brought the C1, which is acting as the hard, the C3 as the medium, and then the C4 as the soft. So rather than sort of C2, C3, C4, we've got C1, then a jump of 1 up to C3, and then 4. And that's to try and make, again, for more competitive racing. We're seeing Pirelli trying to increase the strategy options available here. Of course, it's a sprint weekend, so you get one less set of tyres anyway. But they're trying to turn this, I think, more into a slam dunk 2-stop race, which should hopefully make things more interesting for Sunday's Grand Prix. But I wonder how much that sort of throws a new obstacle up for the drivers to get their heads around coming into, again, a one and only practice session.
Yeah, it's definitely another obstacle to throw into an already challenging weekend of a sprint race weekend. That's surprising to know about the tyres, actually, between the hards and mediums, as there should be a bigger jump in terms of grip levels. But with the lap times that we've seen so far, it actually looks very close between the hards and mediums. But I think that may be just due to the low grip circumstance potentially on track in this early phase of the day. I think a lot of the drivers are actually on long runs now, potentially, seeing that Ocon just did a lap there, but he didn't open his DRS flap down the Kemmel Straight. Leclerc was on a slower lap there as well. So I think there's some longer runs going on medium and hards, but I would expect that drivers start to come out on the soft tyre in the final 20 minutes, obviously to prepare for qualifying, which is up next.
Yeah, sprint quali, you can hear that right here on 5 Sports Extra 2 from, we'll be on at 25 past 3 this afternoon ahead of the lights, green light coming on at 3:30 for sprint qualifying. So it really is jam-packed to get this all done in practice 1, which just has 21 minutes and 34, 33, 32 seconds remaining. We've got indeed many on the long run there, we think, but Franco Colapinto, the Argentine racer at the Alpine, the one, as you pointed out earlier, Alicia, on the soft tyre, so trying to get some data on that. Had a big hairy moment though, did Colapinto coming through Pouon on his first flying lap on the soft tyre. So sticking with it for now is Colapinto. He's up in 8th spot and just about to start another lap, or he might dip into the pit lane. We'll see. No, he dips into the pit lane. So he's decided that's enough of that on the soft tyre for now. But Colapinto very much in need of a strong weekend after a bit of a desolate run of results. Didn't really even get to start the British Grand Prix within the chaos that was lap 1 at the British Grand Prix. We kind of missed Franco Colapinto starting, then coming back in, and then some sort of mechanical, technical fault on that car meant he couldn't get back out. So that was a DNS for Colapinto in the end. But up front, it was very much another battle, wasn't it, between the two McLaren drivers and just how close they are. And Alicia, I don't know what you made of it, particularly coming off of Silverstone. Piastri looked like he had it in the bag. He got that penalty, obviously, for the safety car infringement. I mean, how did you view that? As a racer, did Norris, did he luck into that win? Or was that penalty right for Piastri to receive, braking and Verstappen then having to go past him on the run down to Stowe? Piastri, first time I think we've seen him quite emotional, actually, in terms of he was upset, and he made that clear for everyone to see.
Absolutely. I think Piastri, we all know he's quite a calm character. He doesn't really seem to get flustered, but I think we did see a little glimpse of that at Silverstone. I think it was definitely Piastri's race to lose, and it was just quite a silly mistake, in all honesty, I think, because he got it in the bag pretty much. But whether to say that Norris was gifted the win, I think we'll never actually know, because obviously Verstappen then had that spin after the safety car restart that promoted Lando into second position. But then Lando, potentially knowing that he was going to overtake Oscar with the penalty that Oscar had, he may not have executed his full potential pace, been able to fight against Piastri. So we'll never know, actually, I don't think, who would have had the outright pace to win. But I think it's extremely exciting this weekend. I think it's round 13 of Norris versus Piastri. There's only 8 points in the championship between them. Who will come out on top this weekend, we don't know. And in terms of the other teams as well, I think you can never write out Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. Mercedes, before George Russell's disqualification last year, they finished 1-2. And of course Ferrari, they've had a little bit of a disappointing season so far, but Charles Leclerc currently P1 in practice so far. Lewis Hamilton had a much stronger outing, particularly in qualifying, up until Q3 at Silverstone. So I think it's exciting, and I don't really know what to expect this weekend.
I think it's easy, isn't it, Beck, to go, oh, it's just going to be between the two McLaren drivers. But I think actually, as Alicia points out, Ferrari with an upgrade, I think they under-delivered in Silverstone. I think they've got more to come. But Charles Leclerc is currently fastest. He's got good history here. Took his first win here in his career, of course. And then you've got that Max Verstappen, who also goes quite well there. And if it weren't for all the engine penalties, he'd have a few more pole positions to his name.
My money's actually on Verstappen, just purely for the new manager bounce.
Do you think?
Yeah.
An immediate touch of Laurent Mekies and they're back to winning ways.
You could just so imagine it, couldn't you, that he just ends up dominating the whole weekend. If there's one thing I've known covering Formula 1 for as long as I have, is that you never pay attention to Max Verstappen on a Friday, because he could have the worst possible Friday, and let's be honest, he does love a grumble on a Friday, and he absolutely nails it for the rest of the weekend. So yeah, I'm going to go with the football analogy and have a new manager bounce and go with Verstappen. But to Alicia's point, the battle between Piastri and Norris has been absolutely blockbuster. We are halfway through the season now, and there's only 8 points between them. And long may this continue. And actually, I have to give credit to McLaren, Zach Brown, the CEO there, and to Andrea Sella, who have done an incredible job of managing the drivers, the pairings. We've seen mistakes happen. They come straight out. Canada, for example, that was obviously the big one with Norris on Piastri. Norris gets out of the car straight away. My fault, sorry, hands up. They are creating a culture within that team where they actually all want to work together. Obviously, the drivers, let's be honest, and Alicia can talk to this a lot better than me, but they want to win. They really couldn't care less what the other side of the garage is doing, and they want the trophy for themselves. But the culture that's being created in McLaren at the moment is superb. Everyone's being allowed to push hard, they're fighting fair most of the time. We are starting to see a few of the niggles coming in, and I think when we get into the business end of the season after the summer break, it is only going to get more tense.
I kind of want gloves off. I'm all for the harmony, and I like the fact they're allowed to race and they're pushing hard, but I want bitter rivalry.
They're coming off. There's absolutely no doubt about it. There is no way any driver who is fighting for a world championship within the same team are going to stay mates. You only have to go back to the days of Mercedes 2016. Nico Rosberg, Lewis Hamilton, best mates since their karting days. They didn't speak to each other for years after that. And seriously, they did not speak to each other for years. And even during that season, they wouldn't be in the same room as each other. There were all these tactics. One of them would turn up late to a briefing just to put the other one off. Like, what were they doing with having a secret meeting without me that I wasn't involved in? Like, there were so many mind games that go on that we don't get to see, that we find out about afterwards, obviously. But this is all going to start happening in McLaren. And it doesn't matter how good a manager you are and how calm you are as a person, which Andrea Stella absolutely is. These two, they are elite athletes at the top of their game, fighting for both of them, their maiden world championship. Neither of them really have any experience of it. Norris, you could argue slightly, but not really last year, let's be honest. So it is going to be absolutely blockbuster viewing after the summer break.
Alicia, what are your mind games that you deploy out on the racetrack?
My mind games, well, I just drive as quickly as I can and just hope for the best, to be honest.
No
Not
mind
too many
games.
mind games.
The no mind games is the mind game. That's how you get them. But it is fascinating, isn't it? But coming back to the culture that he's created, we're getting a beautiful image of Isaac Hadjar. I'm going to say asleep, but perhaps visualising a perfect lap is the better way to go there in the Racing Bulls, with his head resting up against the headrest. He is gone, is Isaac Hadjar. He is in the pits. He's down in 16th, and the top top 11 covered by a second at the moment. It's Leclerc with 15 minutes to go, fastest of anybody. Piastri, Verstappen, Norris, Ocon the top 5. Ocon actually has a really good run of things here. He has been in the points in Spa in his last 7 consecutive finishes here, so it could be a good day on Sunday, or Saturday of course, for Haas and Ocon. Behrman also up inside the top 10 in 9th. Hamilton is 6th ahead of Tsunoda. Then comes Colapinto, Behrman and Sainz. Stroll is 11th ahead of Antonelli, Russell, Alonso, Albon the top 15. Then comes Hadjar, Bortoletto, Lawson, Gasly and Nico Hülkenberg 20th and last at the moment, 1.9 seconds off, and I think we need to still continue to give Nico Hülkenberg his flowers a little bit, Alicia. I mean, what a result for a start. It's those kind of races where you can get a crazy result, but to go from last, and I watched, I think Formula 1 put together a really good video of Nico Hülkenberg and his communication with his engineer throughout the race. He didn't luck into that. Okay, the weather played its part, but Hülkenberg, at times he was called into the pits, he said no, not yet, and showcasing his experience proved vital there, and that's how he got a podium. And just how amazing was that to see?
Oh, it was incredible, and I was fortunate enough to be at Silverstone. I was in the BRDC clubhouse watching the race, and I think towards the end of the race, when Nico Hülkenberg was running in P3, he had Lewis Hamilton behind him in P4, and we all know that Lewis Hamilton around Silverstone is a different beast, and I thought, oh, he's not got much hope left now, but he made the right tyre decision. I think he was on the medium tyre, Lewis was on the softs. And yeah, as you mentioned, his experience just played critical there, really. Every decision the team might have told him to box, stay out, whereas he was fully leading the decisions that were made. And I was just so happy for him. I think the whole place, all of Silverstone, the atmosphere, everybody was just so happy for him. It's really well deserved. And
I feel like the atmosphere within the team has really changed this year as well. They've obviously had this kind of middling identity while they form into Audi next year. Mattia Binotto, Jonathan Wheatley coming on board. They've had, well, a couple of bosses come and go while they've been restructuring things. And Beck, I suppose there was chat when Nico Hülkenberg was signed. People thought, well, why? Is this only because he's German and Audi are German? But I think a race like that, and indeed, just to put the podium aside, you look at the previous results for Hülkenberg leading up to the podium: 9th in Austria, 8th in Canada, 5th in Spain. That's the reason he's been signed. When there's opportunity, when there are points on the table, he is a man that can get them for you.
I didn't think it was particularly inspirational to sign him, I will be honest. I still don't think it's particularly inspirational to sign him, but that does not mean I didn't understand why they signed him, because there weren't many options left where you need that experience, and the experience when you're trying to turn into a massive team like Audi, who are going to be expecting results because they're going to be wanting to beat their German counterpart in Mercedes. So it is an enormous ask on Hülkenberg's shoulders. He was signed because of the, what does he say, multiple, I mean, he's 10 plus seasons in Formula 1, I forget the number now.
15 years
I was going to say 16.
239 race starts.
Well, the unenviable, well, I'm not sure that record will ever be broken of race starts without a podium, but obviously that's ended now. But it was, he is consistent, he is Mr. Consistent, he is Mr. Midfield. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. He should have had a podium long before this, let's be honest. But that aside, he did deserve it. It wasn't luck, although I think sometimes you have to be in the right position so to get it, and I think that was actually what happened. That's been happening a few times with like Norris, as you were mentioning earlier at Silverstone. You have to make sure you're in the right position to take advantage when it's there and available to you. So I think with Sauber, I mentioned it earlier with Wheatley going there, I think just the operation is so much slicker now, how they talk to you, and I watched that radio exchange as well, and it's interesting how they communicate with each other. And I think one of the most important things, and we're seeing it between Hamilton and his engineer at Ferrari as well, is you have to have that trust between driver and engineer. Hamilton and Bono, as soon as Hamilton announced he was leaving, the first phone call into Mercedes was, right, what's happening with Bono? And they were like, no, they locked him down, they promoted him, they made clear that Lewis couldn't take him with him. And that's how it happens. Actually, we should mention, I don't think GP, and Benny, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think GP is there this weekend for Max Verstappen. It's Simon Rennie who's stepping in, who, not an issue, absolute pro, long time experience. But that really matters. And this is all part of what Wheatley is doing, building the confidence between driver, car, every single department, the operations, making it all work. So exactly like Alicia said, everybody up and down the paddock was extremely happy for them.
But it is coming back to that communication between driver and engineer. Alicia, how important is that? How do you build that up? Especially, I suppose, when you're going through junior categories, you might have a different engineer every year.
Absolutely, and you do, to be honest. That driver-engineer relationship, I think, for me personally, is the most important relationship of any team member within the team. Because I believe that every driver has very different driving styles. I know myself in Campos Racing this year, my teammates Chloe Chambers and Rafaela Ferreira, we all drive very differently, so we require different things from the car. As we just see Kimi Antonelli, I think, has a moment into the bus stop chicane, goes a little bit wide, still on the hard tyre though, so not on the quali sim yet. But yeah, going back to the engineer, we all require different things from the car, so there's no two drivers exactly the same, and it's about building that relationship, building that trust that the engineer understands what you as the driver needs from the car. And actually in F1 Academy we don't have any onboard footage throughout a race weekend, so we only have the data, so that obviously makes it a lot more difficult when giving feedback to the engineer, because there's no video to support what you're saying in terms of how the car balance feels. So that communication is really key, and that trust in what you're saying is correct. So that relationship is extremely important.
Are you having to sort of get to know each other like before the season starts? Are you going sort of, mini golf to try and get to know each other, sort of team building kind of exercises? Not
mini golf, no, because I'm useless at golf. So, but yeah, absolutely, just spending time with each other, getting to know each other as people, not just as an engineer and a driver, just understanding how we work, how to extract the best from each other, when we might need space, when to speak to each other, just how to speak to each other, what language works, what works basically. So yeah, that time with the engineer is crucial.
Well, let's see if Hülkenberg is currently last, but we'll see if Sauber can continue their good run of things at the moment. They've rocked up to 6th in the Constructors' Championship and really forcing Williams to now look over their shoulder at Sauber. Williams currently 5th with 59 points. Sauber 18 points behind them with 41 to their name. So certainly in terms of when it comes to prize money at the end of the year, very, very happy days for the Sauber team, who have been struggling over the course of the last couple of years. That was the sound you just heard of Oscar Piastri making his way through the left-hander of turn 9, which now heads you back downhill towards the double apex downhill left-hander of Pua, one of the fastest corners on the calendar, as just approaching 300 kilometers an hour as he feeds out, coming into the Lefania chicane, a quick right-left chicane which leads you out into a short straight before you then head once again slightly cambered right-hander through the first part of Stavolo, fastest of anybody in the middle sector. Piastri is bolted on the fastest rubber, the soft tyre, the Red Bull tyre. So has Stroll, who went fastest a few moments ago through the left-hander of Blanchimont, flat out there through qualifying. Maybe not quite yet in these early parts of practice, but it will be close to it as he then heads to the braking zone of the bus stop chicane, which heads you uphill and out through the final left-hander. The rear wing flap flies open for the DRS across the line for Oscar Piastri, who goes fastest by almost a second. 1:42, 1:23 for Oscar Piastri, who has been the only driver to score points in every race so far this season. But another man who will never be ruled out is Max Verstappen, making his way through Malmedy now, downhill towards the Rivage corner, fastest of anybody in that first sector. Pierre Gasly's actually just popped up into third. And I think actually, Alicia, in the furore of Hulkenberg's podium, we kind of missed a little bit that Pierre Gasly had a really good run in Silverstone, 6th, which he celebrated on the radio like a win. So that was a mega result for Alpine, who are struggling last at the moment in the constructors. It's not been an ideal season for them so far.
No, not an ideal season for Alpine, but what an incredible result for Gasly. Again, I was at Silverstone watching from the clubhouse, and Gasly had George Russell behind him for so many laps. It must have been half the race distance. And I was thinking any lap now, George will be able to make the move on Gasly, but he just didn't. Gasly was consistent, made no mistakes, and what a great result for him, and loads of great points for the team as well.
It certainly was, and really with just one car in the game at the moment, Franco Colapinto embarking in his first sprint race weekend for Alpine. So again, it's tough on rookies, this kind of sprint race format, because you don't get that much time to bed in. But now halfway through the season, for the likes of himself, for Antonelli, for Behrman, for Lawson and Hadjar, you would think they would be up to speed by now. As Verstappen crosses the line in second on the soft tyre, half a second adrift though of the McLaren of Oscar Piastri. So Piastri looking strong in these early stages. Of course, Verstappen born in Belgium actually, wasn't he? So it's really another home race for him. Often the Orange Army come out in full force in the grandstands around this track, and it's Lando Norris as well. I think his mother is Belgian, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Sophie Compen, who is Max Verstappen's mum, is a very good go-karter back in the day. Belgian, used to be Christian Horner.
Well, there you go. And certainly with a lot of support then around here for the likes of Verstappen and Lando Norris. Norris currently down in 9th. He is just coming out on the soft tyre now, so we'll see what he's got compared to Piastri in these last 4.5 minutes now. So we're getting a look at some quick runs. Piastri fastest by half a second. Leclerc comes across the line 8/10 back, so advantage McLaren for now. Antonelli's out there on the medium tyre, so too is George Russell, trying to gather perhaps a little bit more data on this run. George Russell, who made the one-stop strategy work this time last year in Sunday's Grand Prix, in what he describes, and I think a lot of people describe, as one of his best races in Formula One, then denied for the car being underweight due to excessive plank wear. But certainly he still counts it as a win, and he crosses the line second.
Still, yeah, weird for me. Just can't really get the rotation. It's almost like I'm three-wheeling as well.
Almost like he's three-wheeling, struggling to get rotation in the car. So Max Verstappen not happy with, I suppose, just how his car is turning into the corners. I mean, Alicia, when you're dialing in your car during practice sessions and you are struggling for grip, you're struggling to get the car pointed to where you want it to be. I mean, what are your first processes to try and rectify that?
Yeah, it's always, we've just got a track hazard. Oh wait, no, it's gone green flag, never mind, we're all okay. As Lando Norris, where did he just go on his lap there? P10, he's a second off Piastri, so something he must have got caught up in that little yellow flag there. But yes, talking about sort of the process of getting the right car balance underneath you, again, every driver requires a different thing from the car. As we just watched Lando Norris maybe have a moment going into sector 3, just head wide, just into the gravel there, and that ruined his lap. But what a lap also from Oscar Piastri. I noticed that Max Verstappen was just under 4/10 actually up on Lando Norris's lap time on Oscar Piastri's lap time in sector 1, but then ended up 5/10 behind. So potentially Max pushed a little bit too hard in sector 1, then lost the tyres in sector 3. So that's something to bear in mind as a driver as well, is how much do you push that sector 1 to still conserve tyres for the final sector, especially around a long track like Spa.
Ollie Behrman, also another, finding his way into the gravel. So the majority then on that soft tyre run. Of course, qualifying works a little different in terms of the tyre allocation available to you. So you're free to use any tyre available in regular qualifying, but in sprint qualifying, sets of new medium tyres are mandatory in SQ1 and SQ2, and then in SQ3, drivers must run the soft tyres, but they don't have to be a new set. So giving us a little indication perhaps as why we might see a couple now switching to the medium tyre run. Those are the first tyres you'll be using in sprint qualifying, so trying to make sure you've got enough on those tyres to get yourself through, and maybe some towards the end of the session might well scrub a set of soft tyres if that gives them better overall performance and grip. But again, all of this having to be understood within just 1 hour session before we go into the first proper competitive session a little later on today. That's sprint qualifying. You'll hear that in full on 5 Sports Extra 2 with the green light for that session underway at 3:30 this afternoon. Russell has put himself up into second on that medium tyre, splitting Piastri and Verstappen both on the soft tyre. Languishing towards the back, though, you've got the likes of those 2 Haas cars, Colapinto and Gasly, Tsunoda as well, struggling down there at the moment. I wonder if we'll see what he's got. He's now out there on the soft tyre, just on an outlap at the moment, so we'll see. He might... Yeah, he's coming into the final sector now, so he should just about get over the line in time for one final flyer, but leaving him really with only 1 lap to do on that one. So too Liam Lawson down there in the bottom 5, but little focus on the Aston Martins perhaps. For so long in Silverstone, Lance Stroll was actually having a rather good race. He was fighting Hülkenberg for that podium, and both Aston Martin cars in the points. So this seems to maybe be a little bit more upward trajectory now that we're seeing from Aston Martin, and this is quite crucial from them, isn't it? Because their big focus is for next year, but they've got to keep their drivers happy for this season too.
Definitely, yeah. I'm really excited to see what the pecking order is like next year. Obviously a big regulation change, so going back to the McLaren drivers, actually, what we were saying before about Piastri and Norris both fighting for their first World Championship, there's a lot of pressure on both of them, but equally we don't know how strong McLaren will be next year. We don't know how strong any team will be next year. The whole pecking order might change, so that sort of multiplies the pressure that's on those 2 drivers, because it might be their last opportunity for a few years to win a World Championship. I doubt it. I'm sure that McLaren will still be strong next year, but we don't actually know. And obviously Aston Martin, they're looking very solid here now, 7th and 8th. Again, excited to see what they can do next year.
Oscar Piastri makes his way to the end of the Kemmel straight through Lecom, out through the right-hander of Malmedy, turn 7, downhill braking into the right-hander, long cambered hairpin of Beau Rivage, then out through Jackie Ick's corner, down towards Peugeot. Max Verstappen on one final flyer as well. He's faster than Piastri in the first sector. Lando Norris as well, trying to put in a better lap than Ted. He made a mistake on his first flyer, went into the gravel, and that's what these weekends will be about too, is trying to find the peak of your performance as early as you can whilst not making a mistake. Oscar Piastri flirting with the gravel, but manages to find the correct line out through Stavelot, and then it's the run down towards Blanchimont, flat out left-hander, over 300 kilometers an hour as he tilts the steering wheel slightly to the left, keeps his foot planted to the floor. A man who could have easily won the last 2 Grand Prix, but it went the way of his teammate Lando Norris. Out of the final corner, lost time in that middle sector did Piastri, but overall finds a 10th on his own time, cements himself as first. Lando Norris did find time, puts himself up into second, but half a 10th adrift of his teammate. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen now through the bus stop chicane, this giving us a great indicator as to what we might expect in sprint qualifying later on. He gets closer to Piastri, but still 4/10 adrift. Verstappen dropping into second, but splitting those 2 McLaren drivers. Certainly looking tasty, but Oscar Piastri, I feel like he's got confidence here and maybe a little bit of fire in the belly after the last couple of rounds.
Absolutely, and I'm really surprised actually just watching Max Verstappen's lap. He was 4/10 up on Piastri's first sector, but then that transition to being then 4/10 down at the end of sector 2. So that suggests maybe Max has got more straight line speed than Oscar Piastri, but then going into the more tight, technical, high speed section of sector 2, he might just not have as good of a balance as Oscar Piastri does have. So that's interesting, but definitely between the 2 McLarens, Oscar definitely has the upper hand in FP1 session here ahead of qualifying.
I suppose sector 1, because it's mainly just sort of trying to keep your foot planted, isn't it? So it's confidence really you need in that sector 1, and you need that straight line speed from the car. Does the driver make more of a difference in that middle sector where it does get a little bit more tight and technical? That's where I suppose you can maybe gain or lose the most amount of time?
I think so, to be honest. I think Sector 2 is the longest sector. It's the most challenging for the drivers from a driver perspective. That's where they can make the most difference. I think Sector 1, Turn 1, to be honest, is probably underestimated, as in how much high pressure that is for a driver. It's a second gear corner, so very slow speed, but that exit is absolutely critical because they don't then brake again until at the end of the Kemmel Straight. Eau Rouge and Raidillon absolutely flat out, so not much of a difference that drivers can make, but that Turn 1 exit is absolutely critical, but then it's down to the car's straight line speed, really.
Couple of practice starts happening now as the checker flag has fallen. Oscar Piastri fastest ahead of Max Verstappen and Lando Norris, so those drivers, important for them to try and lay a bit of rubber down on the track and get themselves away as the Red Bull, as the Williams I should say, sorry, of Carlos Sainz makes his way after recovering half of his session. But that will just about do us for FP1. We will be back again for the first competitive session of the weekend on 5 Sports Extra 2 right here for sprint qualifying. We will be on air at 3:25 with the session starting at 3:30. But Oscar Piastri quickest ahead of Max Verstappen, Lando Norris third, George Russell fourth ahead of Charles Leclerc. That's the top 5. Then it's Antonelli, Hamilton, Stroll, Alonso and Isaac Hadjar, the top 10. We shall see you a little bit later on, but we shall hand you back, all my thanks to Beck and Alicia and Andrew as well. We shall hand you back in the meantime over to County Cricket and Kevin Howes. Back to you, Kevin.
We will not be a second late for you this afternoon, my friend. 3:25. We look forward to joining you again then, and of course plenty more over the weekend as well. But yeah, returning to the cricket across all the sports extras.